Universities in the world, and then there's the president that was inflicted upon NYU 11 years ago. So it's a chance for us to get to meet each other. Just move to the front a little bit. Come, especially here. So you see, the minister is here. Now, part of gathering the mishpucha like this is that we want to take credit for each and every one of you. So you should all know that your Minister of Justice, previous Minister of Finance, this wise man, is wise in part because he has not one but two NYU law degrees. Two. 1963 was your LLM, and then he came back. He's trying to pretend he's young. He said 64. And then he came back and got the doctorate in law. And it was my first year as Dean of the Law School, 1988, 1989. I was named Dean of the Law School in September 1988. My daughter, our second child, was born in September 1988. She was a Yom Kippur baby, so very blessed. And when she got around to applying to law school, 2 years ago, she said, she called family council and she said to all of us, and we were very surprised, she said, what would you think, everyone, if I went to law school? And I said, it's a great education, no matter what you're going to do. Her mother and I met in law school. We were a civil procedure romance. The lawyers in the room will understand how difficult that is. So civil procedure, really odd. You see, Harvey's a law graduate. He says, really odd. But you know something, and Beth will confirm this, because Beth was my student. I don't see any of my other students here, but if there are any of my other students here, you must get your hug before we leave tonight, okay? But Beth will confirm this. 20 years I taught civil procedure at NYU Law School. From 1981 to 2001 when I was named president. Every one of those 20 years, every one of those classes, about 100 students in each class, 20 successive years, at least 2 of my students married each other. And it did not count. Interreligious marriages did not count. If you married outside the section, that did not count. It had to be in our civil procedure section. 20 years. The great class of 1987, 10 of them married each other. 10 students, 5 couples, and not a single one of these marriages has broken up.
Wow.
Not a single one. So I would say, as the dean of Harvard used to say in the 60s, when the minister was a student, would say, look to your left, look to your right, one of those people won't be here in June, referring to the attrition rate at Harvard Law School. I would start the semester, as she will tell you, by saying, look to your left, look to your right, 2 of you are looking at your spouse.
Wow.
But in any case, so I was named dean in September 1988, the year Katie was born. When she said she wanted to apply to law school, I said, you can apply to law school. She said, well, I think I want to go to NYU. I said, honey, you know, I'm not sure about this. I said, you can only go to NYU if you apply to another top 5 law school and you're admitted. And then you have to be admitted to NYU. And she had a very strong record. She applied to Harvard, she was admitted. Then she applied to NYU, and the opening sentence of her essay to NYU, having been born the first month of my deanship, was, yes, comma, that Katie Sexton. She took it right on. She said, She's there now, and she walked into her first class this past September, and it was with Professor Arthur Miller, the great civil procedure teacher, in whose class 40 years ago, her mom and I had met when he was a professor at Harvard. He since has come from Harvard to NYU, so it all came full circle.
That's very touching.
This man, meanwhile, this man was on the faculty the first year as my deanship.
Wow.
And I invited him back. He said, I will not come back as long as you're dean of the law school. So he's been, and then I thought after I became president of the university in 2001, I was named president in May 2001. And I thought maybe, so I said to him, I left a note. You know, you always leave the note for your successor. My note was, get the minister to come to be the faculty. Now he says, I won't come as long as he's president of the university. So this is his protest here. God bless you for being here tonight. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much, but I totally deny what you said.
All right, my friends, just I don't want to take a lot of your time, but I do want to say this. If I could ask you just to keep me quiet, please. Shh. If we could just, this is the convening of the family. And when you convene a family like this, it's first of all to make the connections, and it's to give you the news. So I want to give you the news of your university. And I want to give you that news because I want you to become ambassadors for our university. It's in the interest of all of us that we find the brightest young people that are available to come to our university to get the kind of education that we uniquely can give them. And it's about that I want to talk to you. There are traditional things, you know, you could be in a room like this, I'm sure last night, or the night before, or the night before that, or the night before that. There was the president or a dean from a great university giving the news of the university. And wherever you go, if it's one of the really good places, I mean, NYU right now is universally recognized as one of the 2 or 3 dozen great universities in the world. And if you went any of those people, they could report to you on great faculty and great students and great programs. And all of that is going on. So I'll just give you that in a quick bullet. I think that you may know that this this is now January, so I think it was November, an NYU professor won the Nobel Prize in Economics. This is, what you may not know, this is the 3rd NYU professor to win the Nobel Prize in Economics in the last 10 years.
Wow.
And that in the last 10 years, your faculty has won 8 Nobel Prizes. 8 Nobel Prizes in the last 10 years.
Wow.
That's a first-class faculty. And we find that we are, for a certain kind of person, and it's got to be a kind of person that can handle complexity and cacophony, and that doesn't need a big field in front of each building. A person that can understand that it's truly living to be part of a university that has no gates, not a single gate. That when you step out of its building, you step on sidewalk, which is when you're supposed to hit in New York City, when you step out of a building. Or when you look around, you may not see another NYU building if you're not at Washington Square. So for that kind of person, we find, and we found for the last several decades, really, there's a man named David Kirk that writes about higher education. He's a Berkeley professor. He wrote a book about 2003 in which he described the history of higher education in the United States between in the 20th century. And he does a whole chapter on NYU. And I can say this to you because I had nothing to do with it. He went to press in 2001. I was named in 2001. It describes the 20 years between 1981 and 2001 as the most remarkable 20 years in the history of any university. And that's the 20 years at NYU. And he ends the first paragraph of that chapter on NYU by saying NYU is the, and he italicized the word the, success story in contemporary American higher education. And that was 11 years ago. And much has happened in the last 11 years, believe me. The students are sizzling hot. Sizzling hot. And they come with a special attitude, that same attitude. We now say to them in admissions, don't come to NYU if you can't handle complexity and cacophony. And see it, and this is the added part, see it as a learning opportunity. See it as a learning opportunity. And here, I come to tell you the most important piece of news. And this is something that that you should listen to because it's utterly novel. What your university is doing now is completely novel. So, as evidence, even before I give you the substance, I think evidence that the minister would say is admissible. This last September, the Board of Trustees of Yale University met at NYU for the day. And the purpose was to ask us to explain to them in a full-day presentation what the new form of a university, we call it a global network university, what that new form of university was. And they called us a year in advance to schedule that meeting. 2 weeks later, the 21 leading universities in Europe, Oxford, Cambridge, the Sorbonne, the presidents of those universities asked me to meet with them for a day to explain what it is, this global network university. So let me just take 4 minutes and explain to you what your university is doing. I'm going to put it out to you in a very simple way. NYU, as you may know, came very, very close to going out of existence in the 1970s. If you can just stand with me at the fountain in Washington Square Park in your imagination and look north up Fifth Avenue. On the right up Fifth Avenue is a building, 1 Fifth Avenue. Big, beautiful apartment house. That apartment house used to be faculty housing for NYU. Some people in this room will remember it.
Right. Faculty
and student housing. We sold that apartment house in 1976 for less than the cost of an apartment in that building today. But we wouldn't be standing here today. We would not be standing here today if we had not sold that apartment. We were down to the very last pennies in the bank account. We were on the verge of bankruptcy. New York City was on the verge of bankruptcy, but NYU was in worse shape.
I remember that.
And then, in the late 1970s, a group of New York citizens said, we cannot let this institution fail, with names like Tisch and Rudin and Hyman and Lipton. And they stepped forward and they said, we will put our reputations on the line. And that's what began the change in 1981. And those wonderful 20 years from 1981 to 2001. And when I was named president in May 2001, there was such momentum. There was such momentum going forward. The place was sizzling hot. But we didn't have then, and we don't have now, the monetary endowment of our peer schools. So if you made in your mind's eye a list of the top 20 schools in the United States or in the world, if you made it in the world, it would probably mostly be schools from the United States, and you said, okay, what is the per capita monetary endowment of those schools? The poorest of them would have 15 times the per capita endowment that NYU does today, and that's even though over the last 10 years, we've been the most successful university in the United States in fundraising. We ran what was the largest campaign in the history of American higher education, and we doubled the per capita endowment. But we doubled it from $25,000 a student to $50,000 a student. Comparable number for Harvard, $2 million per student. For Princeton and Yale, $1.5 million a student. Even the relatively poor Columbia, $700,000 per student. Okay, so monetary endowment we don't have. Okay, and even if all of the people in this room gave all of their wealth to NYU, And you could if you wish. And it would help. Okay? But even with the considerable success in this room, it probably would only double our endowment again. So we'd be up to $100,000 a student. All right, but what made that 20 years work? What does NYU always, what attracted you? Locational endowment. Locational endowment. We've got the best location in higher education. Greenwich Village, New York City. Washington Square Park. Right? So that's been a secret success. We've been able to get some of the best professors and best students and teach them in an imaginative way because we had that locational endowment. And we had another kind of endowment too that was a little less visible. I call it an attitudinal endowment. An attitudinal endowment. This is second nature to you. Okay, I call it in New York City the immigrant's attitude. Every immigrant wants a better tomorrow. You don't care what yesterday was a golden age. We had a golden age 50 years ago. Who cares? Okay, we're interested in a better tomorrow. Okay, this is the spirit of Israel. We want a better tomorrow. Okay, that's the story. Okay, that's our attitudinal endowment. I call it an affirmative lack of contentment. It's a very New York kind of thing. Okay, so we're always looking for the next great thing to do. And that brings me to the final part of this and the 4 minutes I want to use to explain to you what we're doing now. I call this, now we've added a structural endowment. A structural endowment. Now what could that mean? Well, it started off, frankly, by observing a fact about New York City. Now, what's not known about me, people think of me as the dean of the law school because I was dean for 14 years. They don't know that before I went to law school, I was a professor of religion. I have a PhD in religion, and I was the chairman of the religion department. Now, I'm a Catholic. I'm an important figure in Judaism. I must claim this. Not as important as Moses, I won't say, but I am an important figure. You all know who Jackie Robinson was. Jackie Robinson broke the color line in American baseball, 1947. His number 42 is the only one retired in all of baseball. I am the Jackie Robinson of the B'nai B'rith Little League. I was the first goy. I broke the religion line. I was the Shabbos goy from the Twin Cantons. So I grew up in the 1950s in the time of Jackie Robinson, aware of the importance of seeing the world through eyes other than your own. Okay, I'm a Catholic. But my best friends were of religions different from mine. And that gave me a way of looking at the world that when the greatest pope my church has seen in recent centuries, John the 23rd, became pope, and he invited us to see the world through the eyes of other religions. It meant something to me. Enough of theology. It caused me to get a PhD and study it, but most of all, it created a mindset. And when I became president of NYU in May 2001, so this is before 9/11, I began to say, why do I love the city? And what is the advantage and value proposition of this university compared to other universities? Because if there's no value proposition, it's not a useful life for faculty or students or for me to be spending my time here, to be giving it my life, my talent. And I noticed, because I was working to get the Olympics to come to New York, we didn't succeed at that, but we succeeded in noticing the city. I noticed that New York was the first city in the world that could say in its public schools, every country in the world was represented by kids that had been born in that country. And that if you went to the neighborhoods of New York, you could taste the food of any country, hear the music or the prayers of any country. And so we developed for the Olympic bid a punchline for the athletes: come to New York, the world's second home. It was meant to say New York is the world in microcosm. Now, we didn't succeed at the Olympics, but now I became responsible for this university. And I said, what is the value proposition of this university? I said, wait a minute. The value proposition is that very fact about New York. The cacophony, the complexity of NYU is an opportunity for us to teach our students how to create not a community where everybody's the same, but a community of communities, the way New York is trying to be. And the world is miniaturizing. Believe me, you know this far better than I do. The world is miniaturizing. And you can't gate people out anymore, either intellectually or physically or economically, we just discovered. So the big challenge in the 21st century is going to be, how do we respond to this as humankind? Do we have a clash of civilizations which blows us apart? Or do we instead create a community of communities? And then that became a theme, using New York City, using the very complexity and cacophony of NYU, using it. So we said, you know what? We now have an explanation why we don't do big-time sports. Many in the room were in NYU when we were big-time sports, right? When you were at NYU, believe it or not, his first year at NYU, NYU was in the Final Four of the NCAA basketball team. Who would have thought? There was a time that NYU, in the famous Thanksgiving Day game with Fordham, from which I have 3 degrees, the school up in the Bronx, the Jesuit school, in the famous Thanksgiving Day game with Fordham, succeeded. In fact, the woman showed me the article. She said, that was my father. I read the article. Her father spun off the block of Vince Lombardi into the end zone. Lombardi was playing 7 blocks of granite for Fordham. Into the end zone to tackle the Fordham quarterback. Safety, 2-0. A 2-0 victory by NYU over Fordham, resulting in Fordham not going to the Rose Bowl. Think about that for a second. Times were different. Why do we not do big-time sports? Because getting together in big crowds, wearing the same colors, pretending we're all the same, it's very Ozzie and Harriet. It's very 1950s. This is the 21st century. And we want to learn to be a community of communities. That is the opportunity that New York and NYU provides its students. All right, so then after we get them out into the neighborhoods of New York, and they've tasted the foods of different nations, then the next step was, let's send them to study away. But not send them on kind of an academic tourism where they go and they spend, they're technically registered and they wander around and so forth. But let's create our own study away sites where we can ensure the academic quality and we can integrate it with the curriculum that they take. And let's even encourage our professors to move through the system. So today, as we stand here, and that's what this is, today as we stand here, we NYU have 16 study away sites on 6 continents. The most recent of which are Sydney and Tel Aviv and Washington, D.C. We consider that a foreign country. No, we consider it a study away site. Why couldn't we have a study away site in the United States, we thought to ourselves? It's a great opportunity for our students to do something different from what they might do in New York. So now if you're a student, just take a Stern undergraduate business student, for example. If you're an undergraduate business student at Stern, you do 5 semesters in New York, 1 semester London, 1 semester Shanghai, 1 semester Buenos Aires. This is a whole different kind of undergraduate business education. And in fact, we say to our students, the data just came out in the United States on study away programs and which schools send the most students away. I wasn't surprised that NYU was #1. We'd have to be, given this philosophy. What did surprise me, because the top 10 schools were all big schools like state schools or USC or us, what did surprise me was at #1, we had twice the number of students going to study away, twice as #2 did. And we're only about 60% of the way to our goal. Because we expect our students to spend not 1, but 2 or 3 study away semesters at our sites. And when we open this new site here, the number of students that come to Tel Aviv will probably triple or quadruple from the 35 students a semester that we have here now. But the point is, they'll move through the system. And then the last part of this global network university was about 5 years ago. We said, you know, what might be interesting is if we have this system now where the doorway is New York, and you can study at the 16 sites on the 6 continents, what if we opened up another doorway? Or maybe even 2. And that was when we opened the second doorway in Abu Dhabi, in partnership with the government there, where they're building us a 4.5 million square foot campus in the prime location of town, and where the Crown Prince, this is not a campus, I want to emphasize to you, this is not a campus for citizens of the Emirates. This is a campus where the Crown Prince has charged us to find the leaders from around the world who can build this ecumenical society, a community of communities, who will, and we could go anywhere, and if we find the best student in a tribal village, or in a street in Russia, or wherever, if that student can't afford the finest education in the world, the faculty-student ratio there is 1 to 4. And we have our Nobel laureates, and our Guggenheim winners, and our Pulitzer winners coming through and teaching, you know, freshmen, sophomores in college. The Crown Prince said if you find them, and they need scholarship assistance, they have it. Full room board tuition if necessary. So we have built there, we only have 2 classes, 150 freshmen in 2010, 150 freshmen this past September. We're looking for the next 150. The 300 kids we have there now, 70 countries represented. Every single one, a third of the class, perfect SAT scores in math. Third of the class, perfect SAT scores in verbal. Median kid speaks 4 languages. And they're drawn. Why did they turn down Harvard and Princeton, NYU, New York, Oxford, Beta? Because they want to build this global civil society. And then that caused, and this is the final paragraph, that caused the Chinese government to come to us. And this, we knew nothing of this. Nothing. And they came and they said, we started 2 years ago looking at the great universities in the world with a list of 50. We cut it to 5, and then down to 1. And NYU is the one that we've selected, and we want to do with you what Abu Dhabi did. So now there's a third doorway through Shanghai. And you enter from anywhere in the world through any of those 3 doorways, and then you can circulate through the system. The difference in China will be that half of the students will be from China. So we'll again have 150 students, 75 will be from China. And we've been placed on the top tier. So there are, in China, what's called the C9 universities. It's their Ivy League. Beida, Fudan, Tsinghua, and so on. We're the 10th. 12, listen to this number, 12 million high school graduates a year in China. 12 million. More students studying English in China than studying English in the United States of America. Okay? 12 million high school. This last academic year, we were trying to recruit a terrific Chinese-American mathematician. Princeton wanted him, Harvard wanted him, MIT wanted him, Caltech wanted him. We wanted him. We didn't have the money to provide the same package or salary or anything else. But we could say, if you come to NYU, 1 year out of 4 you can teach in Shanghai. And your children can learn the language of their grandparents. And you can be host to your home and so forth. And that was the deal. For the people for whom it's appropriate, this is a whole different kind of university education. It's an education that is designed to build the leadership of a global civil society that builds a community of communities. And it comes naturally out of the personality of the school that you created, you helped create it. And that's my final sentence. I did my doctoral dissertation on a man named Charles Eliot, who was president of Harvard for 40 years. Eliot said, if you want to have a great school, accept great students, graduate them, and claim credit for their achievements. What I do want to say is this. What I've described to you is a very, very forward-looking picture It's a picture of optimism and hope for the world and for our university. I think we've got a very good chance of making it happen. We'll have a better chance if you're there with us. But one thing I know is this. There was a time when the roads weren't as wide. And people that had nothing but talent and desire and will and a capacity for hard work came to us, came to Poly, which is now such an important part of us as we build engineering, and just put their shoulder to the wheel. And then went out, and I come back to my friend, then went out and took that talent and the education we gave them and did great things. So when you gather like this, yes, it is for us to claim credit for your achievements, each one of you. I use him as an example. But it's also for us to say thank you. Thank you for creating the opportunity for us to stand on your shoulders and see still farther. We understand that this is a relay race of excellence and that you ran your leg well. We will not let you down. We're committed. So God bless you, and thank you. Some of you asked if this was an annual event. It is the first. That doesn't mean it can't be annual. Maybe next year in Jerusalem. But one way or another, we're all united in the hope for humankind that is incarnated in the presence of your university, and I hope what we're doing is worthy of you and makes you proud. Thank you all very, very much. Now, please, we have here some booty. So I'm going to let the minister pick the business card. Run out of here, pick a card, any card. This is like a lie. Is this, can you do this? Is this illegal? Okay.
You know, Phil, you worked in our law firm.
Oh, wait a minute here. Say it again.
You know, Phil.
So, hold on. This is an NYU tie. The Ferragamo family had 2 grandchildren come to NYU, and they made a tie for us. You'll see it's very, 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 you can wear this in public places and compliment you. I know ties aren't in Israel, but it's a beautiful tie made from the university seal. Okay? And with it you get the often coveted, not always coveted, and you can reject it if you want a presidential hug. You want a hug? This is, well, but the winner can be a man. This is an NYU scarf, also made by the Ferragamos. Okay. So here, one. Class of 1980.
I want to have a chance to get it.
If you pick your own card, you still win. Believe me, it's happened.
Take mine.
Go on. Is your card like on beige paper?
No.
Ron Gothenburg. Well, it's a man.
Ron? All right, here it comes. Okay, very good. Hold this to me. Do you have a woman in your life that can enjoy a great scarf?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Just here.
Okay. Well, you come up then, Pedro. She's beautiful. I'm going to hug her. I'm not going to hug you. But do you want the presidential hug?
Sorry?
Presidential hug? You want a hug?
נתחבק אותו כבר, נו. מתחנן בפניו.
All right, there you go. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy each other, please.